It's time for FOMO as we look at Broadcom ahead of earnings. And joining me here in studio is Marley Kayden, host of Market on Close here on the Schwab Network. Marley, this is a big one. This is probably the last big one that we got on the calendar from a stock-specific earnings event for the quarter. And it's been the one that's kind of carried the mantle, I would say, for AI alongside Nvidia, at least for the last several quarters. What are we expecting here for AVGO going into this event?
Well, right now, the chip giant is expected to put in their quarterly revenue of $15.8 billion with EPS coming in at $1.66. So consensus, that's, looking pretty good. They have a history of beating, so likely going to be a beat today. But we've seen lots of beats that weren't enough. So the greater story is going to be, a lot of discussion around semiconductors. Their semiconductors compete in several categories: networking, broadband, server storage, wireless, industrial. I'm probably even missing some AI ASICs. So they help large tech companies design custom AI chips. So those segment revenue pieces are going to be very important today, particularly two of them: the semiconductor solutions revenue, which is expected to be up 25% year over year at $9.11 billion, and infrastructure software expected to be up 16% to $6.7 billion. Now, Broadcom has said the company sees a customer AI chip market opportunity between $60 and $90 billion by fiscal 2027. Alex, so any update on that forecast would absolutely be of interest to investors. I saw it mentioned in at least 3 notes about something that their ears are attuned for. Also, the company has already said it's looking for 60% growth in AI revenue for next year, which is a huge number and could potentially make it tough to excite investors much more when your projection is already that high. So likely going to see if there's any adjustment to all of that. That being said, Melius still stands really strong. They're agreeing with their 60% projection on AI growth. And then we got an upgrade from Evercore ISI. Their price target was upped from Evercore ISI to 342 from 304. They maintain their outperformer buy rating, saying they see a lot of positives with, Google being one of their primary clients, one of their biggest, Meta being the other. But it is interesting because they run sort of aligned with, and Melius even in their note said that they exist in rarefied air alongside of Nvidia. So if we're going to take a look at Nvidia as a comp potentially to Broadcom, it will be interesting to see if they perform in the same fashion and have a reaction that is similar. Because, Nvidia posted arguably incredible numbers, but one small issue of any kind, and we've certainly seen a lot this earnings season, it can be quite unforgiving.
Yeah, and where things I think are really unique about the Broadcom Nvidia conversation is the AI has become Nvidia. Where in the case of Broadcom, it's a very fast-growing segment, but their core business is still clicking very, very nicely and is still far bigger in total revenue than their AI segment. But you can literally see the moment they started, really meeting this AI market, which was the first quarter of 24, their revenue went from growing, 4 or 5%, which is respectable for the kind of the company it was, to 34% before peaking out at the end of 2024 at 51%. It's since started to turn the other way, though, and it's leveling off in this 20% range overall. Of course, you just talked about how fast the AI segment is still growing. It's changed Broadcom from a value stock to a growth stock. But I'm with you. Like, how are we going to interpret? Are we going to interpret really nice AI numbers as enough? Or is it going to be, hey, this is still a decelerating overall story and picture?
And definitely a lot of mention of that in the notes about some concerns about the AI bubble and a deceleration in AI. Not anyone firmly going bearish at all against Broadcom, but absolutely citing some level of concern just in what we've seen from other similar companies like Nvidia, this sort of deceleration. Not that they're not growing, they're just not growing at that same rate. But also, as you look at like previous earnings history, they've had 0 EPS misses in the last 12 quarters. I mean, it's pretty incredible. They've had one tiny revenue miss. They missed by just over $6 million on $14 billion in revenue. So, I mean, a very, very small miss. Incredible performance. They have strong earnings surprise records. Not pricing in a huge move here either. They're not a particularly volatile stock. As I just check right now, their implied one-day move just over 6%. So, not expected to be a massive volatile move in response in either direction. But will be interesting. Shares have nearly doubled over the past year and are still trading up, more than 1% right now as they come into earnings this afternoon. So will be interesting to see how the street receives this one, just because we have seen quite a bit of punishment for small things. We've also seen reward for things that seemed unexpected as well. And like you said, this is a growth story, but is deceleration, because you can only grow so rapidly for so long, going to be a net positive because they're still growing, or is it going to be an issue?
This is a really fun company because it's, one, the valuation is incredible, how much it's accelerated to the upside, but part of that's because the growth story's changed dramatically. But it's almost its own microcosm of the barbell strategy, where it has this super consistent, low growth core business that just executes, generates a ton of free cash flow. But now suddenly it's, by most, I think, seen as like the second major player in AI from the infrastructure standpoint in the semiconductor world. And that's a giant growth opportunity. So it's like, if you want exposure to that, but you maybe don't want the beta of an AMD or an Nvidia, it seems this is the slightly lower beta, more consistent way to do that. 90% analysts like this name. The valuation, though, has got up to about a 50 times forward earnings, 46. So certainly has elevated. Any final thoughts on this one?
I will have it live for you. You'll be on set with me for Market on Close, so we'll have the earnings live on air. And I've been so fascinated this earnings season just because the reactions have been so different. We've seen tepid reactions to things that typically we would expect historically to see a strong reaction to, and we've seen very strong reactions to things that traditionally would have a much more muted response. So it will be interesting to see how the market responds to this, considering how lofty the expectations were for Nvidia and Marvell, which you could sort of argue are their closest peers, and they both saw their earnings fall after their earnings didn't live up to the hype. So
yeah, and you wonder too, going last, is that good this time or is it not? We'll find out.